to the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. We are proclaiming liberty one show at a time, and the next one starts right now. Welcome back. My name is Clint Armitage. This is the Liberty Podcast. Thanks for coming by and joining me today. So we've got a new series starting, part 1 and part 2, possibly more. We'll see how that goes. And it's entitled, the episodes are entitled, Jesus Christmas. Not Christmas, Christmas. Because in the last episodes, remember I was talking about how we need to focus on the reason for the season, which is Christ. And so I want to focus our attention on what that means and what a name means. And I remember back in the day when I was a young kid, I remember when I would read the Bible or I would hear about Jesus Christ, I thought that was his last name. Jesus Christ. Christ was his last name. Of course, later on, you come to find out that Christ is actually a title, the Anointed One, and not a last name. So it was funny for me to figure that out. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not his last name. So anyways, thanks for joining me today. Again, just a quick reminder that if you want to listen to the podcast online, you can go to any one of the podcast apps that you use, Google, Stitcher, Libsyn, what else? Spotify, all the major things, Apple, all that stuff, Apple Podcasts and all that. You can listen to us there. Also, you can go online to our website. And remember, we merged with Radio Coffee House. And if you go to radiocoffeehouse.com, not only can you, find out more about our coffee ministry, you can also listen to the podcast there. It's under the tab radio. And if you need to send us any information, you can still email info@clintarmitage.com. If you have anything that you want to talk about or discuss or a podcast episode idea, whatever it is, you can just get in touch with us there. Or if it's coffee related, then go ahead and email us at info@radiocoffeehouse.com. All right. So getting back to our episode here, Jesus Christmas. It is not his last name. Just for some of us who didn't know that, Christ means anointed one. It's a title. So Jesus Christ means something. The word Christ means something. The name means something. And so what we're going to do is we're going to read a passage regarding his birth because obviously he's the reason for the season. He is the Christ that was sent to us, born to die. And this is now the Christmas season or the Christmas season. And we want to acknowledge that. I remember even today, I still see some people use Xmas, right? They put an X before MAS, and that's how they refer to Christmas or Christmas is Xmas. And I don't think they're doing it on purpose, trying to be disrespectful or anything like that. I don't believe that at all. I just think they're trying to abbreviate so they don't have to write the whole word down. However, again, it's just something that I'm sensitive to because I feel like, man, you're taking away from what the name means or from what the season means. You're taking away from what God is doing and a reminder that every year he was born for us, to die for us. And we need to acknowledge that. And so that's why this is entitled Jesus Christmas. Okay, so we're going to start with Isaiah chapter 9, verse, let's go with verse 6. Yeah, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And again, this is the prophecy from Isaiah 800 years before Christ. He's prophesying about the birth of the Anointed One. So let's read through that, and then we're going to break it down, and we're going to look at names. We're going to look at why these things are important to understand this so we can fully understand the Christ. Okay? So here we go. Verse 6. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. All right, so we finished up there in verse 7. Those are some super, super lofty words, right? So let's look at it again and see how strong these words are so that we can break it down and understand what it's talking about here. In verse 7, it says, of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end. So Jesus is being put in place, and this is a prophecy about his birth, but already establishing his sovereignty over the government and peace. Okay, there's going to be no end to it. He's going to reign forever. We got to really look at these words and go, wow, this is huge. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness, because God is good. Jesus is good from that time on and forever. And it says the zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. God's going to do it. God has been doing it. It's already established. It's already done. You know, because the Bible talks about these prophecies, even though they were done, like this one's done like 800 years before Jesus was born. It speaks in a present tense. You know, it's like a perfect present tense or something. It's already being done, establishing and upholding it, right? That's present. It's already done. His reign is already here, and it's going to be accomplished, and it is being accomplished. So understanding that God has set this thing in motion since the beginning of time, and it's already accomplished, gives us confidence that we can trust that whatever he says in the Bible has already come true. We just have to wait for that time for when God's timing is going to hit and understand it. So that's why he tells us to prepare for the coming. He tells us to prepare for when things are going to happen, because he has already told us in his word that it is going to happen, and it is happening. Once we start to pick that up and understand that, we can work from a side of history that is already, decided. So there's so much more trust and confidence, and we can have less anxiety knowing what we know if we trust that God's word is true. Okay, so now let's back up a little bit. Right before verse 7, we have verse 6. The end of verse 6, it says, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So we're going to break those down. Let's look at Wonderful Counselor on this episode here. That's what we're going to talk about, is Wonderful Counselor. What does that mean? Well, if you think about it, in today's society here in America, the word wonderful doesn't really hold the weight that this is talking about here. Okay, so I went on to gotquestions.org and I searched this and I got some information on it. So I'm going to be talking about that and what they say, because they have a great breakdown of it here. Okay, so Wonderful Counselor. So we'll break that down. Well, let's talk about the word wonderful. Again, in our society, the word wonderful means like pleasant, or it was good. Like, hey, that was a wonderful meal. That was a wonderful dinner. That was a wonderful game, or that was a wonderful play. It just means, oh, that was a good play. It was better than average. That's kind of the weight that holds, which is not much in our society. But what this means in the verses here, the word wonderful holds a lot more weight. So the word wonderful in this passage literally means incomprehensible. Okay? Incomprehensible, meaning we don't understand it. That's what it means. Wonderful. Jesus is a wonderful counselor, and it's incomprehensible. We don't understand it. So here, let's switch the word around a little bit. Okay, instead of the word wonderful, let's switch out the words, and let's say it like this, and you get to start to understand a little bit of the meaning here. It's full of wonder, right? When you switch the word like that, full of wonder, then you start to understand, like, okay, it weighs so much more. Full of wonder, incomprehensible. It's more than just something that's good or something that's above average or pleasant or lovely. No, it is boggling to the mind. It is something that we cannot understand. And think about how Jesus demonstrated his wonderfulness while he was here on earth. Okay, let's start with his conception, that this verse, that these passages talking about, right? The prophecy of his birth. He was conceived in the womb of a virgin. Matthew 1:23. Okay, that right there, incomprehensible. We don't get it. We can't understand that. How does that happen? It's impossible. Again, it is full of wonder. It is incomprehensible to be conceived in the womb of a virgin. It just doesn't work like that. What about when he was on earth? After he was born, and obviously he started his ministry, he was healing people. He healed diseases. He healed lameness, blindness, leprosy. All these things that he did, he healed. It's all miracles, right? It's incomprehensible. We cannot understand how Jesus went up to someone, rubbed mud in their eyes, and the next thing you know, they could see, right? They were blind, and now they see. Incomprehensible. Full of wonder. What about his teachings? His perfect life. He lived a perfect life. We cannot understand that. We don't get it. A perfect life? No. We're sinners and we know it. Deep down we know. We may think in our pride that we are good people, but we know we are sinners. The only reason why we could live righteously is because of his perfect life. And then what about his resurrection from the dead? Incomprehensible, full of wonder, resurrecting from the dead. And I'm not talking about you're on the emergency room table and they're, zapping you with that thing, or they're giving you chest compressions or whatever, and you wake up. And that's even crazy. I mean, that's kind of incomprehensible too. I mean, you can start to understand it because, he just died, his heart stopped, and then we pumped it back. Okay, you can get that. That seems to be a little bit more understandable for us to comprehend. But think of this. He was dead 3 days, and then he resurrected. Mark 16:6. He was resurrected after 3 days. Incomprehensible. And all the things, like I said, his teachings, the things that he taught were counterintuitive to the way we think. It's counterintuitive to the way that humans understand things, right? Just like I had mentioned before, the disciples turned this world upside down. Why and how did they turn this world upside down? What does it mean? They did things counterintuitive because they did what Jesus taught them to do. Okay, the Beatitudes. Okay, Matthew chapter 5. Blessed are those who mourn. So wait a minute. You're mourning, you're sad, you're hurting, and you're blessed? I don't get it. Incomprehensible. Rejoice and be glad in persecution. So you're getting persecuted, and we're supposed to rejoice and be glad? What about this one in Luke 6:27? Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. That's opposite. We can't understand that on our human nature, sensibilities, because it's opposite. It doesn't make sense in this way. It's all incomprehensible. Okay, now the second part of that title there, wonderful, we got that. We understand that. Wonderful means full of wonder. But now we got counselor. Now, again, in our society, counselor is someone that can just help you along, guide you, give you some good advice and all that. So it doesn't hold the weight like it did in ancient Israel. Like a counselor in ancient Israel was like a wise king. So you think of Solomon giving guidance to his people, right? But Solomon was also a man. He was given God's wisdom, but he was also a man. Now let's put it on the title of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. This is Jesus now being your counselor. He has all wisdom. Don't you want wisdom, advice, anything that you can get from a counselor who created the world, the universe, you? That is the ultimate. Someone who is sovereign over all things in this world and all things in this life and your life, right? The breath that you just breathed, Is that right? Breathed? Anyways, the breath that you just took was because he allowed it. That's how sovereign he is. So wouldn't you want counsel from someone like that? Of course, he's qualified in way above the needs of our, little minuscule type of brain knowledge and wisdom. We want counseling from someone like that. And so when you put these things together, wonderful counselor means that you can trust everything and anything that God and Jesus tells you because he can handle all our problems. He can put us in the right direction. He can truly give us advice that is transcendent, not only on this plane, but the spiritual plane as well. And we don't have to worry. We can pray to him because he's a wonderful counselor and he loves us. And we can't fully understand that love. But at least by looking at what this means, he will be called Wonderful Counselor. That's comforting. It's comforting. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. My name is Clint Armitage. This is the Liberty Podcast, and we are finished with part 1 of Jesus Christmas. Don't forget the reason for the season. And until next time, stay safe, stay motivated, and keep seeking liberty. Joining us for another episode of the Liberty Podcast with Clint Armitage. If you want to get in touch, email us at info@clintarmitage.com.